the Italian Football Podcast.
Right, we've got two questions I'm going to combine because they're kind of about the same thing. Heine Danielsson asks, "Hi guys, love the show and the format, always a good listen. If Uncle Elkann has lost interest in Juve and only cares about Exor and Stellantis, would a sale be the worst thing in the world, even if it would be strange to see Juve owned by someone other than the Agnelli family? I mean, they could surely use a cash injection since they seem unable to create a sustainable business model themselves. I recently saw Andrea Agnelli saying that without COVID, the Ronaldo move would have turned out completely different. And even in hindsight, he would do it all over again. I'm not so sure. As I see it, all the money thrown after CR7 completely hindered Juve in investing in areas that were much more needed, especially in midfield. How do you see it?" And the next question is Daniel Ljungström. "Hi fellas, can you explain what the bloody hell Giuntoli is doing? Spending €5 million on a dry loan for Renato Vega is just awful business on so many levels. First of all, he's more or less covering a third of what Chelsea paid for him 6 months ago. Second, he's spending €5 million on a defender that wasn't even linked to us until he failed to bring in all his other options. Third, why not just recall Rugani for the remaining months if none of his preferred options were available? I had so much hope for Giuntoli, but I'm losing faith in him for every single transfer that occurs. And my second question is, staying on Giuntoli, if Juve were to replace him, who would you take and why?"
Okay.
Let's start.
I'll start off with Giuntoli, and then we'll go on to the bigger question about Elkann. So starting with Giuntoli, I mean, this is something that we've spoken a lot about in recent weeks, and in particular with Vega, this is what I was very critical about on Thursday's show last week, in which I said that this is when you're starting a project and you're trying to build a great team that has fallen, and you're trying to start at the beginning and build a team and a squad to become great again. Sound like Trump here. Then the last thing, MJ, make Juve great again. MJGA. No, but when you're trying to build something up again, there's certain things you don't do. Number one, you don't sell any of your core players. You choose who your core players are and you build around them. And that's why I was very critical about the potential, or at least the consideration of selling Cambiaso. It's just not what you do when you're building something up. And what you also don't do is you don't do things like spend $5 million on a dry loan for Renato Vega, who's a developing player, and that just becomes dead money. You've got no control over the player. You're not building there at all. So yes, I've been very critical, and then that's before we get to all the mistakes he's made, not signing a backup striker or another striker in relation to in addition to having Vlahovic for the first half of the season was that's killed that's killed Juventus more than anything this season, and that's unacceptable. That's a huge failure. And then of course, his big signings have not worked. Douglas Luiz spending $50 million on an unmitigated disaster, and that was he signed him instead of signing Calafiori. The master of the Calafiori money there could have afforded Calafiori with that money, and then obviously Coop Miners and Nico Gonzalez. Some of his transfers have worked. Some of them have been good, but as a whole, taking it as a whole, he's been a big failure so far. So with Giuntoli, I think we're all in agreement there. We don't really need to dwell on that. Then there's the bigger question from Heine. Should Elkann, is this a Banter era? And the Banter era, for Juventus standards, yes, it is a Banter era. If Juventus go 5 years without even challenging, let's be honest, they haven't even challenged for the title, let alone they've been fourth. They're sixth this season, or fifth or sixth this season. Never, the amount of money they've wasted on players being out. I know they qualified, but they were out the Champions League one season as well. By Juventus' standards, on and off the pitch, it has been a Banter era by Juventus' standards. Maybe not a Banter era to the extent of what you're going to say, Nima, which is Inter and Milan during their days, where some of the players they had were far worse than that. Yeah. So probably it's not as bad as Inter and Milan, and there's probably more hope. But yes, by Juventus' standards, I think it is a Banter era for Juve. Should Elkann, and then to the final question, should Elkann sell? Is it the worst thing in the world for it to get out of the Agnelli family? I don't know if it should be out of the Agnelli family, but what I would say is that John Elkann is the wrong man to be the man at the top. Put it that way. If they're going to keep it within the Agnelli family, it needs to go to someone else, because Elkann doesn't care. He doesn't care about football. He doesn't understand football, and he's pretty incompetent as well. So definitely he's the wrong man for the job. And also, I just personally just do not like the guy at all. At all. Do
Look,
not like.
I think in terms of
the guy.
Juventus,
Yeah.
in terms of Juventus standards, I remember Gigli, Secco, and Jean-Claude Blanc and their Juve. So that was a Banter era Juve. This is not a Banter era Juve. This is a Juve that has a new sporting leadership, a new director leadership that is trying to find their feet. Giuntoli has made lots of mistakes. I don't think he's incompetent because of it. He's made lots of mistakes. And what Elkann has done is said, we can't keep pushing money into this black hole. And that is just logical. You can't just keep pounding hundreds of millions of euros year after year after year into a black hole. And I think what Heine says is spot on. Andrea Agnelli's delusional when he says that had it not been COVID, it would have been a good idea, because the CR7 deal stopped Juve from actually investing in midfield under Paratici, if we remember. These giant contracts that he handed out, it just stopped Juve from investing elsewhere in order to make them more competitive. And it wasn't COVID's fault that Juve never competed in the Champions League when CR7 was there. Like that's because they needed to invest elsewhere and they invested wrong. So I think that Giuntoli is making mistakes. He's made lots of mistakes, but I'm not, he's not an idiot. He's not Paratici. He's not Secco. He knows what he's doing. His career is proven as much. But we also have to be honest about the horrible mistakes that he's made and that he's backtracking. As for the Agnelli family selling, I think regardless, Italian football needs to, like Milan have done and Inter are doing, they need to focus on bringing in revenue and growing the product and the brand. That's what they need to do, both at club level, league level, and so on. I don't think it's sustainable to just keep pumping money into a black hole the way that they've been doing at these clubs. Berlusconi, Moratti, Agnelli. I just don't think it's sustainable, and I don't think it's like artificial breathing, And I think at some point something has to give. So I don't think it would be good for Juve if the Agnelli family or the Exor were to leave Juve. I think that would be a disaster for Juve, to be honest. So yes, from a Juve perspective, I would absolutely not hope that they leave. I think
I would say be careful before you do that. Also, with the revisionism on Agnelli, people forget how many years ahead he was of everyone else in what he did at the start with Juventus. He just, like you've said yourself, he got arrogant at the end of it.
Very
he got drunk on his own power, a bit like De Laurentiis did with Napoli.
Exactly.
But what he did at the start, if the rest of Italian football had followed with him, Italian football wouldn't be in the state it's in now. With the stadium, with some of his ideas that were far, far advanced, but he was held back by the dinosaurs in Italian football. So he was very, very advanced, but I think he probably got frustrated at the end as well, and he became desperate, and he just thought, you know what, we can't do this organically, we can't do this as a unit with the rest of Serie A because none of them will want to play ball. So I'm going to just try this and try that, and he made stupid mistakes, like we saw, Ronaldo especially, that's where Juventus are, but I'd certainly rather him than bloody John Elkann, I'll tell you that. I mean, God. The soul. There's no soul. That there's no soul. Like, the guy is a lizard. Like, there's no soul within him. They're a soulless club with him there. He just doesn't inspire anything. He talks once a year. It's just horrible. It's just, you don't feel the inspiration there, and that's the feeling.
I think nothing speaks louder than the fact that Jeep, who they own, is no longer even sponsoring the club. I think that is just it just goes to show how uninterested and disinterested he is.
Yeah.
To me,
No,
it's
a
just,
club needs to be well run from the top for it to succeed. Otherwise, it becomes like, Juventus have been the last 5 years, and that predates Elkann. That goes into the final days of Agnelli. Of course, it does. But if a club is run badly at the top, if everybody there's no synergy, then everybody's not together, and that includes the fans as well. This is what happens. Doesn't matter who you buy, everything is poisoned, and the same thing happened with Milan in a different way. Look how unhappy the fans are. And that spills into the team, into the dressing room, into the squad. When you buy new players, look at Manchester United under the Glazers. It doesn't matter who they buy. Everybody flops at Man United because that club is so poisoned from the top through the boardroom that and I feel like, I'm not saying Juventus are there. They're not at that level. But I'm saying that's the risk that Juventus find themselves in after 5 years of not winning anything. That this becomes poisoned, and that's why. Yes, I don't think Elkann is the right man. They need somebody that can create that environment that is needed to win, and they just don't have that at Juventus now.
No, they don't. And Igor Lipovac kind of asks as well. I'm just going to read his question as well because he does say something funny. He says, "Thanks for the great answer in the last Q&A episode. I wanted to say that I just love Carlo. His analysis and emotional outburst, glued with those amazing Bedford moments. Carlo never change. However, for next pod, my question is it possible we're seeing Juventus quite deep into a period of 5-10 years from what we'll now call a banter era? Why do I ask this? I take into account the way new signings are working out, weird an atmosphere in the club managing, Giuntoli and Motta failing so far. And then I listen to how Carlo and some of my Juve supporting friends are talking about the whole situations. It reminds me of when Inter were still on the downward slope in our banter era. Fans are emotional and not seeing things rationally because the club is used to success, but now they're just far from quality in playing or managing staff. Can a winning club like Juve have a banter era too, or is that just reserved for Milan and Rome clubs? To add to this, a few months ago I compared Douglas Luiz to Kondogbia, but I didn't expect to be so much on point with comparison. Forgot to add the comparison. Agnelli post Ronaldo plus Agnelli equals Moratti post Mourinho. Elkann equals Tohir. Cheers and keep up the good work. Well, we kind of answered all of that, but as for the Douglas Luiz Kondogbia thing, I'd say he's even worse this time around because Kondogbia, he wasn't good.
At least Kondogbia scored as well, didn't he, from the halfway line?
He tried.
Did he
the
score
thing
from
with Douglas Luiz
Didn't Kondogbia score an own goal from the halfway line for Inter?
Yeah, it was pre-season. It's one of the most spectacular own goals I've ever seen, and that was towards the end of his time at Inter. Look, the thing that pisses me off about Douglas Luiz is the attitude. I think it's unacceptable to have that attitude and body language. Like, it's just not on. I think it's disrespectful to the teammates, to the fans. He doesn't. It looks like he doesn't care, and that is just not on for me. Kondogbia tried; he just wasn't very good, and then he went, I think, to Sevilla, and he actually had some success there. But with Douglas Luiz, it just feels like he doesn't care.
He was.
That's the vibes I get.
He was absolutely shocking against Napoli when he came on. What gets me about him? What gets me about him is that he can't even all of his. He's misplacing passes all the time now as well. He's horrendous from a physical point of view. He looks so out of shape. I'm not talking about body in terms of in terms of his physical body. I'm talking about just out of shape. Like when he runs, he just doesn't look fit. He doesn't look in a condition to play. He has no energy, has no intensity. He can't. He just doesn't bring nothing. I can't believe how bad he is. As a player, I really enjoyed watching. I really liked him at Aston Villa. As I've said, my kind of player. I can't believe. It's unbelievable. It's like he's had everything sapped out of him. It's mad. I don't know what it is. It's mad. It's like Samson having his hair cut and all of a sudden loses all of his powers. It's like I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it is to do with his hair. That stupid hairstyle with blonde in his hair. He reminds me of. Have you ever seen Borat, the film of Make Great Adventure to America, that one, you know, cultural learnings, whatever it was called. Do you remember the hooker that he brought to dinner, the blonde, the black woman with the blonde? That he reminds me. He's got that haircut.
God.
Like that's what Janelle was. Her name's Janelle. That's Juventus. That's who Juventus have bought. They bought Janelle this season. They've got Janelle as centre midfield. Next time, like,
Oh my!
just stop playing for Juventus. Just go to dinner with Borat. That's
Oh dear. Oh dear.